I'm Janelle Marcuccilli and welcome to my house. I'm going to teach you how to make spaghetti sauce and meatballs and how to make Italian meatballs, which is an old recipe and very few people know how to make that one. The spaghetti sauce is my mother's recipe. My mother's born in 1911. She learned probably from my grandmother, who was Italian. The meatballs are my father-in-law's recipe. And I wish I knew how he learned how to make them. I used to have a heart attack when I had to fry the meatball because you had to make sure that you didn't get it where it was crusted when you fried it. And then I found out from an Italian girlfriend from Cleveland that I didn't have to fry them. I could throw them in raw into the boiling sauce. So I discussed it with my father-in-law, and he was thinking about doing that himself. And from that day forward, I thank my girlfriend Patty for telling me that I did not have to fry my meatball, and you will thank me too. There are tricks to everything, and I will show you every trick to make a better sauce and a better meatball. So I have 6 cans of Hunt's tomato paste, 12 ounces. This is what you want to use. You don't want to use any other tomato paste because it will be different. This has consistently, for 61 years, been a product that has not changed. So I continue with it. I washed each lid with water. It was something my mother taught me to do. So you wash each lid with water. So the first thing I do is I open every can. I use this can opener because it takes up no space in my kitchen. I used to have an electric one, but the electric can opener took up space. Spaces is a premium in this house, so I stopped using it. I went back to the manual, and as long as my fingers and hands work, I can use it. I forgot to tell you that I am 82 years old, soon to be 83 next month. And I waste nothing. My hands are clean, I just wash them. Periodically, when you buy your ingredients, double check it and make sure they haven't changed the formula of it. I have this big pot, by the way. I had a specially made Alclad 20-inch quart pot because I cook in quantity. It's the stainless steel pot, which I will pass down to one of my grandchildren. Whoever is going to be the one that likes to make sauce will get it. I was able to afford this pot because I worked for a company where I got a lot of money for Christmas from my real estate brokers, and so I invested in this pot. So now what I'm doing, if you'll notice, it's cold water. Don't ask me why, it's what my mother did. So I do what my mother did, it worked. I tried to remove the sauce that's still remaining in the can. So I just stir it around, I go up and down with the spoon. It looks like a real watered down tomato paste. I'm not so quick to get rid of the water just yet because I want to use the water to collect tomato paste that's in here already. Call me frugal in this regard. I'm not a frugal woman, but I am when it comes to this. Okay, so now you make a game out of it because it is boring. Try to get as much of it as you can before you add water to the can. But the recipe is 6 cans of paste, 6 cans of water, 16 cups of boiling water. Don't ask me why, it's how my mother did it, so I boil the water. Another thing about boiling water, when you boil water, water's got to be cold. You don't take it from your hot faucet. You always use cold water and you boil it, and then you're going to measure it. And you put it in. Now, if you notice, you see how this is. You don't want to wait till it's all done. You want to sort of mix it around sometimes so it's not real heavy. I'll do that periodically as I'm emptying the paste into the pot. But can you see how much paste is still in there? Well, we're not going to have that happen. We're going to use that water now.
How many hours does this take to make?
Well, to prep it, maybe in 1.5 hours. I cook it 2 hours covered and then 1 hour uncovered till the sauce gets thick. Because when you have the cover on, it doesn't evaporate and become thicker, but you want it covered so that meat that I'm putting in there is fully cooked, because I am putting in raw meat. Oh, one thing about meatballs. Meatball recipe, instead of turning it into a meatball, you can fry it, and I call it my Italian hamburgers. But the one thing you can't do with that meat, you can't barbecue it on a grill. I did it once and it was absolutely horrible. And one time, I was married 8 years before we had our first child, and when I had to stay home, I thought I was going to improve my sauce. So my big spice cabinet, whatever it said was good in a sauce, I put in the sauce. Kenny, my husband, he came home and he saw that sauce boiling on that stove, and he knew he was going to have spaghetti sauce. He was so excited. But I had tasted that sauce and it was horrible, just horrible. So I knew how bad that sauce tasted. When he sat down to eat, he took 2 bites and he looked at me, and then he took another bite and he looked at me and he said, "What did I do to the sauce?" So I told him I thought I was going to improve the flavor. He was not too happy, and he said I could experiment on anything except the spaghetti sauce. So I learned a valuable lesson. Even in a mistake, you learn what not to do. And that's one thing I learned not to do. The only thing that I improved with the sauce was the parsley. I had an Italian neighbor who I thought was the best cook I had ever met. And she taught me to put fresh parsley into my spaghetti sauce when I'm cooking it. Use the stem because the stem has good flavor. You can either use curly parsley or Italian parsley, depending on what's available. I will not make my sauce without that fresh parsley in it. It seems like it enhances the spaghetti. I don't eat that parsley. When I'm done cooking it, I fish it out of the sauce, cooked sauce, and I throw it away. But I'll show you how I cut the parsley, how I clean it. People need to know how you do things. Sometimes they think you do it one way and really it's done another way. And everything makes a difference as to what you do. The other thing I learned, back years ago, all my products I bought from McCormick brand. I used to buy Mediterranean basil. When they came up with organic, the source changed. The product was not the same. I then went searching for the product that was grown in any country surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. And that's how I bought the product. Then that got to be a little difficult. And now I can only get it from California. It's called sweet basil, and I buy it from the Spice House, which you can get on the internet, and they can ship it to you. It makes a big difference. It's grown in California. And that's what you want. This is as good as the Mediterranean basil as I used to buy. And that's where you want the product from. You don't want it from any other region. And you want it from this house. This is my garlic salt. I've been using this garlic salt since the day I started making sauce. McCormick brand. I get nothing from McCormick brand. I get nothing from any of these people I'm mentioning. These are just the products that I use and have been happy with. So that's pretty good when you figure I've been married 61 years. I have a Polish girlfriend, and when I was in my 20s, I told her my mother made a pot of gravy. I said, "You want to come over for gravy?" I was raised to call spaghetti sauce gravy. She, being Polish, thought I meant brown gravy. She couldn't understand why I was inviting her over to my house to eat brown gravy. From that day forward, I've never called my sauce gravy, because people who aren't Italian don't know that. One of the tools that I like to use is a wire whisk. And as you can see, I have broken down the sauce. Now, we're done with the sauce in this regard. And we're going to add the water. I'm going to have to do it twice. One other thing I want to point out is a tool if you have a gas stove. I don't think you can use this on an electric stove. This is, I don't know what they call this, but it's a diffuser. And you put it on your burner, and it prevents any food that you're cooking for a long time, like a stew or whatever it is that you would make. It prevents it from sticking, because you don't want to have that flavor in your food. So I would say maybe go to a hardware store or go on Amazon to find out where you can get it. But can you see it? It has tiny little holes in it. And this is so old. This has got to be 30 years old. It broke the wooden handle, but I still use it. Onion salt. One thing I'm going to say is always read your ingredients to make sure they haven't added anything to it or changed. Never assume that everything is as it once was. And what happens to garlic salt, sometimes gets hard. If that happens to you, just go in there with a knife or a spoon and just break it up again and you have it. So this is what I'm going to do. Ugh! Do you see that? That's pretty big, those holes. They used to be tiny. You see the difference? See the difference in the hole? You have control this way. You have no control how much is going to come out this way. I have no idea why they did this. Bad move. I'm going to have to write them or talk to them to find out why did they change it. What was their reason for changing it? They did the same thing to the garlic. And see, how big is that? That is a big hole. So what I do now, I take the garlic and I go back and forth. Or this is the onion salt. But I'm going to have to do the same thing with the garlic salt. So I can't measure it because I don't know what to tell you. But can you see how it falls in the pan? You want to control what you're doing here. Otherwise, if I didn't do this, I'd have a clump of salt in one spot. You don't want to do that. You hear the water boiling it. You want a glass of Pyrex so it doesn't crack on you. Pyrex is great product to have. I use this measuring cup, which like I said is 8 cups. I do use it for different reasons and it comes in handy. The oven mitt that I have is made out of plastic. That is to prevent me from burning myself. So here I'm stirring it. Can you see me stirring it? You want to make sure how you feel that you don't feel any paste on the bottom of your pan. You don't want any clumps because if that happens, it will burn. And you're not going to like the taste of your sauce. I do not save the water that I use to boil. But what I do is I use it as a disinfectant. And so what I do is I just let it fall anywhere on my sink. Why not use it to an advantage? So now it's empty. You can see it's empty. I'm going to add cold water again and boil again. I need 8 more cups of boiling water. And that's how I handle that. Now we're going to use ground pepper. I have a pepper mill. To me, this is the best pepper mill. I got it as a gift. Love it. It grinds the pepper perfectly. It shows you a little of how it looks. See how nice and fine that is? Sometimes some pepper mills, the pepper is not fine enough. And you want it fine. And you always want your pepper fresh. I can't tell you how much pepper I'm putting in here. That's probably why things always come out a little better, a little different, is because you could just slightly change your ratio on an ingredient, which can have an effect on your recipe. I like the idea that I go all the way around the pot just for the flavor. Now we're gonna put basil. I take the basil and put it in my hand. And you can see how different flakes are on it. So I crush them. Crush it with your hand. I'm just eyeballing it. Basil is going to give your sauce good flavor. I wish you could smell it. I can smell it. It smells delicious. And that tells you you have good basil. If you can smell the flavor in your basil, you know it hasn't spoiled. It's good. I'm going to put this on my stove. We still have things that have to go in here. Oh boy. So I have it on the pan. Turn the flame on. I'm going to cut my onion. See how big this onion is? This is a big onion. That onion is going to go into my sauce. Onion's going to give it good flavor. I'm going to keep it whole because I don't want it in pieces because I'm not going to eat this when I'm finished cooking. I'm going to fish it out. So you can see how I take that first layer out. I'm cutting it just once to release the flavors of the onion in the sauce. And basically, I'll be able to fish it out when the sauce is cooked. Let's just put it in. My water is boiling again, and I'm going to pour it into the sauce. Woo! There we did it. Oh, this parsley, oh, it smells so good. You can never put too much parsley in. I always double check it. I fan it You see how I fan it? When the parsley is yellow, I'm not going to use yellow. I only want green. But you look at how pretty and healthy. That's what you want to look at. You want to look at how healthy your leaves are. Sometimes when you go to the store, they're not healthy, so I go to another store. I am that fussy. I'm not going to go through all this work and put an inferior product in my cooking to have my cooking not come out as good as it should. I refuse to do that. And I just throw it in. I'm going to go through all this trouble of making it and have everything as good as it can be. See how little this is? There's no way I would ever put this in my sauce. That's why you look at them. You don't throw the whole bunch in right away. You do a little at a time. You have control as to what's going inside. So that it's a better parsley stem going inside the sauce.
So you only leave the parsley in for flavor, and then you make sure to take it out at the end.
At the very end of the cooking, because I don't want to eat this in my spaghetti sauce. No. Have you ever seen it in a restaurant with spaghetti sauce? No, but it does give flavor. Oh, I should tell you, what gives your spaghetti sauce flavor is the meat that you put into it. Meatballs will give it a very good flavor. At least my meatballs will. And pork. You can either put pork neck bones in there. I've never done it. My brother-in-law loves pork neck bones. I tend to use what I call bony spare ribs, baby spare ribs. I don't want the meaty spare ribs. I want the bony ones because the flavor's in the bone. I used to do chuck. I used to buy a pot roast, and I would cut the meat from the pot roast. I would throw the pot roast in. The pot roast and the spare ribs, I always brown them in a frying pan before throwing them into the spaghetti sauce. The only thing raw I ever put in spaghetti sauce was the meatball. And you have to have your sauce boiling when you're going to add your meatballs to the sauce. Wood. The wood that I use, it's a maple wood. And the wonderful thing about maple wood is it doesn't stain. You can have other woods and put it in your spaghetti sauce and it will take on the stain of the red sauce. Maple wood never stains. And I buy them. A store is called Jonathan Spoons, and he's in Pennsylvania. And he comes to Chicago maybe once a year to sell his spoons. I've been buying them, I bet you 30 years. Good thing about his spoons, if they break, he'll replace it, no matter how old. You will spend money on his spoons, but they're worth every penny that you spend. What's good about wood, as opposed to metal, is I find that the wood is very gentle to your food, where metal is not. At least I don't think it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's sort of how I feel when I'm stirring around. Now the next thing, they're going to fry the spare ribs that my daughter-in-law loves in the spaghetti sauce. So this is what I call the super duper sauce. The oil that I'm going to use, it's a very premium olive oil. Comes from Italy. It's called Cala Vita. I have found that oils make a difference in your food. I use different oils for different reasons, for different cooking. The oil gives flavor. That I live in a community where we have butchers. I can go to a butcher. That's not true depending on where you live. But I buy my meat from the butcher. Or the butcher, that's all he's selling is meat. You see the fat here? I have to trim it a little. If you don't trim this fat, it's going to float in your sauce. If it floats in your sauce, you have to skim it off. It will come to the top. So then you can skim it off. But boy, you don't want to mix it in your sauce because then you're going to have tiny little flecks of fat in your sauce, and you don't want that. You don't want to do that. It just takes some of it off. I have a very sharp knife here that I can do that with. But when you see like a pocket of fat like that, I'll just remove it a little. Just be careful you don't cut yourself.
So that's interesting because I would have thought that the fat would have given more flavor, but
well, I still have fat in there. But if I can eliminate some of it, I will. Fat does give flavor. Never think that it doesn't. And that's why you have to know the quality of your meat. What's going to happen to this meat when you cook it in the spaghetti sauce, this meat is going to just fall off the bones. It's so tender because it's cooked a long time in the sauce, and that's what makes it more tender. People fight for it. So what we're doing, we just want to brown it. That's all we want to do. I make sure that every part of the rib is brown. See how you see the blood? I will not put that in the sauce. See how that bone is? It's red. I will put it down so that it gets brown. I make sure it gets brown. So now I'm going to start doing the bones part of it. You can turn it this way and the heat will cook it a little on the inside. But you still have to make sure you get those bones. This is what takes time. It's over a half an hour that I'm cooking this.
My great grandmother, Grandpa's mom. Grandpa's mom.
Yeah. Grandma Joe. Every Sunday they had sauce. People were so used to waking up to the smell of the sauce cooking. A lot of Italian families do it every Sunday. And they'll have other meat. Maybe they'll do chicken, they'll fry chicken and they'll have it, or they'll do chicken in the oven. They'll have something else besides the spaghetti sauce and meatballs. I think this is it. There's nothing in here. See? It's all, so that one can now go in. When the food is done, the frying sound is different. Pay attention to how it sounds at the beginning of frying, how it sounds at the end of frying. See if I'm right. At least for my ears, I hear a different sound. Okay, spare ribs are done. Now we're gonna go to the meatballs. This is the pan we use to make the meatballs. Notice, flat. It's gotta be flat. Some of the egg likes to just hang around on the, see? I just get it all out. This is 1 dozen jumbo eggs. If you cannot find jumbo eggs, you will use 1 1/2 dozen. 18 large eggs. That would be the ratio between jumbo and not jumbo. I had somebody that didn't listen to me on the ingredients when I was teaching them, and he bought large eggs. So that's how I learned. You had to keep adding egg. And it's not easy to find jumbo eggs. I can always get jumbo eggs from my Trader Joe's. Sometimes I'm lucky and I can get it from one of the other supermarkets, but that's always a hit and a miss. The egg is what helps to make this meatball very tender. Follow me into the kitchen. See how nice and frothy they are. See the bubbles? It's nice and frothy. They're well beaten. This is 3 pounds of ground round from the butcher. I just gently do it in half. Take 1/2 and you break the meat up into tiny pieces. You do this so that all the ingredients are going to adhere to the meat. This probably will give us a yield of about 27 meatballs, but that's about what 3 pounds of meat will do. So now, if you can see, it has to be a flat bottom. The reason it's a flat bottom, if you have a bowl, think of the bowl goes down. So how are you going to assemble and make everything even? You're not. I got this kooky salt again. This is the onion salt. So you can tell what you're doing because you can see it. And this salt is very fine. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the garlic salt.
The guy says he wanted to be cremated. His wife made an appointment Tuesday.
So now I'm doing the garlic sauce. And you don't do this if you got it left over in your hand. You don't want to do that. Now I take my pepper, and this pepper is Tellicherry, spelled Tellicherry. Tellicherry peppercorn. That is the best tasting peppercorn It's not as sharp, it's not as strong. It smells great when you grind it. I've had other peppercorns that I smelled that I didn't like. So I thought they would have ruined my recipe. I find that this particular brand of peppercorns enhances whatever you're making. So now we have the 2 salts and we have the pepper. We're going to add, I do 4 heaping tablespoons. I don't use a measuring spoon because my mother-in-law did not use a measuring spoon. This is my tablespoon. This brand, by the way, Cento breadcrumbs, plain. You want plain. You don't want to have any flavors to it. It's an excellent brand. It's imported from Italy. I don't know, based again where you're living, if you can get it. If not, go to your bakery and if they make Italian bread and hopefully they make breadcrumbs, you'll be able to do it. Now, the recipe says heaping. So I do heaping. You see heaping? That's heaping. I put it in my hand because I have control. And then I just let it sprinkle over. So now this is 1. We're gonna do 4. You see how I got it all around? Now we're going to add 4 heaping tablespoons of imported Romano cheese. I don't know where you're going to find this if you live in a small town. It's the cheese that makes it. I'm letting it sprinkle all over the meat. So that's 1, 2, so that's 3, 1 more. This cheese is salty. It's imported from Italy. I will only buy this one from one particular store in Chicago, which is right near where I live. And he's Tony Italian Deli. Now I have the cheese. Next thing, I'm gonna take the parsley, and again, I'm crushing it. You just crush it and you move it all over. There's no measuring here because I'm eyeballing it. The parsley, again, gives flavor. And that's what you want.
You don't want fresh parsley, just dried parsley.
If you want to go through the trouble of cutting it, go ahead. I'm not going to do that. Comes out just as good. Now the egg. I'm going to just do about half. That's all I'm going to do. And now we're going to start the process all over again. You cannot do one whole recipe at one time because it's not going to mix right.
So you do half and then you basically layer.
You layer it again. I forgot the garlic. Oh my goodness, we're stopping. Education on garlic. This says fresh organic garlic. And it says important product of USA. That's what you want to buy. Product of USA. You don't want it coming from anywhere else because they have done things to it. Sometimes they lace it with something else and you don't want that. You want it pure. I forgot to put the garlic in the spaghetti sauce. Shame on me. We're going to do about 8 cloves of garlic to the spaghetti sauce. Sometimes a little bit more because it varies on the size of the garlic. 8, a couple ends. To me, the hardest part about garlic is peeling it. This is a cheater. See the difference in size in cloves? You wouldn't call this a 1 clove. This is a clove. So that means you gotta find another one. I have to do it again because I have to do the garlic for the meatballs. You have to have garlic in your meatball. Jeez, I can't believe I forgot. Oh my gosh.
So these 8 cloves are going into the
They're
sauce.
going into the sauce. They're going into the spaghetti sauce. Oh, here's something. Did you see that blemish? Oh, there's no way in heck that's going in my food. As opposed to being whole. You know, because you're exposing it. You follow?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think. So on they're smaller. I only do it twice. You only have to do it once, and then you just throw them in. That's all I have to do. I'm throwing them in my spaghetti sauce. See this? I don't want to mix that in. See, and then eventually see how easy you'll be able to take that out when it's ready. So now we got some garlic in here. Garlic could be dry, like this is dry. You see how it looks? You're not going to use that. So that's why you want to have more than 3 garlics around. When you buy it, you take a good look. Look at your garlic. Does it look like it's whole or does it look like it's deteriorating? I discovered chopping with this knife a couple years ago. Using a big knife like this is fantastic to chop tiny. See, it's so easy. And then you see what happens here. You just take it off because you have to chop that too. Otherwise it'll just stay bigger. And you don't want it bigger. You want it all to be the same size, small. I'm surprised my husband has not run into this room at the smell of garlic. He was born to eat garlic. Everything is good in moderation. But my husband goes to extremes with garlic. If you eat too much garlic, it can come through your pores. Now, you see how I did this? It's all chopped real small. Do you see how I would divide it? So 1/2 would go in 1/2 of the meatball. So there we are. Now I can start assembling again. I'm going to go with the onion salt. So you have to bear in mind that the Romano cheese is salty. Okay, where's the garlic? Garlic salt. Garlic salt. I don't know how much this is. I mean, for 3 pounds of meat, what do you think that is? You don't want to see tons of salt on your meat. Pepper, pepper, pepper. Here comes pepper. Cherry pepper. What I like about this grinder is that it grinds them small. I don't have big pieces of peppercorn. I'm going to do heaping. No, it's heaping. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll wipe my spoon. I don't want the breadcrumbs mixed in with my cheese. I want to keep it pure. Oh, very, very, very important. Never store grated cheese in plastic because it will turn to mold. You have grated cheese, you store it in glass. And this is a good seal. That's why I use this jar. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to take some right now and put this garlic in here. You just move it around, try to see if I can reach that other half that I didn't get the garlic into. There you go, yeah. You see how I just crumble it. You see how I do that? I just crush it with my hands. It's dried parsley, dehydrated parsley. I put dehydrated parsley on my fish, and I bake fish with tons of fresh squeezed lemon juice. 350 degrees for 27 minutes. But I put tons and tons of fresh lemon over it, and then I sprinkle it with dehydrated parsley. And I do believe the combination of both is what makes that fish taste delicious, because people are always very excited to eat it, and I just look at them surprised at their reaction to it. Oh, and notice I'm not wearing my rings for a reason, because my hand is going in with the food, so I never have my rings on when I do that. Not to protect my rings, but so that there's no bacteria or germs lurking around my rings. And so you have to be very careful where you put your rings so they don't go down the sink. But only do that if you have to touch your meat with your hands. Then you don't want your rings on. I learned that from watching television, and they were talking about nurses. They didn't want the nurses to be wearing their rings because they found out that things were lurking, and it wasn't healthy for the patients. Do you see how that looks? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully pick up and see if I can't add some of this garlic around here. I'm gonna go over here and hope that I can hit parts that should have gotten the garlic that didn't get the garlic. And you see how I just pick it up to scoop it. Go from the bottom and you just pick it up. And you never worry about too much egg because it balances out. But I do think it is the egg that makes the meat swell a little, get a little bit larger. And you don't want to overwork it because it wouldn't be good for the meat. You just want to make sure everything is blended. There is a trick, big time trick. I call it the Marcuccilli trick that I learned from my mother-in-law and father-in-law. So I'm going to carry this like this. See how I'm doing this? Up, going into the kitchen. Oh, good, sauce is boiling. Now, this is what you do. Take the meat, make them all ball. Take a little water. You pat it. See how I just got a little water? That's the trick. This water is what's gonna make your meatball taste good. And you drop it in the boiling sauce. So I think they did this so they wouldn't have the meat adhering to their hand. You can see how you get a nicely formed meatball, right? Wrap the water around it. You know, it's just a little water. You don't want a lot of water. You don't want to put it underneath the faucet, but you can see it glistens now, right? And you can see how it's off my hands. It's just a little. You don't need a lot. That's the trick. And put it in. Well, I gotta move the spare ribs around. And then do it again. But again, cold water, not hot water. And you know how you have it because your hand's telling you. See how your hand tells you? So you're gonna have fun doing this. You can also fry these meatballs in olive oil. You flatten them out and fry them. That is your Italian hamburger. When you fry them, you don't have spaghetti sauce. I mean, you can make fresh broccoli, steamed fresh broccoli, noodles, potatoes, corn, whatever vegetable you like as an accompaniment to your meal. But I'm going to have to teach you how to make asparagus. People do not know how to cook asparagus. See now, it doesn't feel right, but when you put that water on, it feels smooth. It's not sticky. That's how you know you got enough water. Yeah, that's it. This is how you do it. Oh. See, it's the meat that flavors your sauce. People think you have to do so much in making a spaghetti sauce, and it's not. It's just parsley, basil, garlic, but it's your meats that give it flavor. Oh, Italian sausage is very good to make a sauce. You would just brown your Italian sausage, and that will give good flavor depending on your good Italian sausage. Everybody makes Italian sausage differently.
What makes it Italian sausage if everyone makes it differently?
Well, what I'm saying is they do something slightly different in taste. You know, I have a store where I go to. It's the only place I'll go to buy the Italian sausage. I'm not going to buy it from a supermarket or another butcher. I'm going to go just one place. It's generally referred to as the Italian store. But there's more than one Italian store in the city of Chicago. Generally, I would say it's a family recipe. And that's what I would say, you know, the store is a family recipe. No two people cook the same way. Same thing like Polish sausage or probably brats, you know, you like one brand or one source better than you like another. When we put the cover on, we're going to have the cover on for 2 hours. And then maybe an hour later, I'm going to open up the cover. And you're going to see all the meatballs that come to the top. And I think that's from swelling. I'm going to check the sauce in 1 hour. And by then, I'm sure those meatballs are going to be up high. So I have to bring them back down. Then it'll cook another hour with it covered. And then I'll cook it another hour uncovered. See how it all comes? Those are meatballs. We got to push them down.
This is after 1 hour of covered cooking.
1.5 hours already. So I just push them down. And now, here's the other thing. Do you see here? That's oil. I would not have that if I didn't have the spare ribs. So you gotta skim it. See how you get the oil? You don't want that. Here, you wanna get all that oil. So sometimes you're taking some of the sauce with it, but better to take some of the sauce. So that's okay for now, and then I'll check it later again. Another half hour, and then I'll cook it uncovered. When I cook it covered for 2 hours, because I threw the meat in raw. And I just want to make sure that this meat is cooked. And you see how thin it is? Sauce is thin. We don't want to eat thin sauce. We want thick sauce. I'll put the cover back on. When it's cooking with the cover off, that will thicken it. So I'll put the timer on for another half hour. See how thin it is?
This is after 2 hours of covered cooking.
So now we're gonna thicken it. And you're gonna thicken it by cooking it uncovered.
Fit in the finished product.
I don't know, fishing out the spare ribs. We already got the meatballs on the table. I'm gonna do the sauce and I put more sauce on the table.
And it's delicious, right?
Absolutely. Oh, I need a
There's a meatball there.
Yeah, you can put that one. Because yeah, no, you got it.
yeah, we're just kind of
Yeah. Please give me some pasta.
what do you want?
The pasta.